Hey, Ken. How's it going?
That's going great.
Good. I wanted to sit down and talk with you today, Ken, about your background because radiation protection is a pretty hot topic in the public sphere these days. And you actually know a lot about radiation, and the reason why our company actually even exists today is because of your journey that you went on to protect yourself from radiation. So can we talk a little bit about you and your experience and your knowledge around radiation with
Yes.
C60?
Yes, I had actually discovered C60. I was working on a fusion reactor project, and to get added protection from radiation, I went out there besides shielding, because a lot of people working on this type of fusion reactor had unfortunate fates. So I went out looking for an extra radiation protectant and discovered this stuff called carbon-60, or C60 for short. And basically, they gave, one set of rats got carbon-60, the other set of rats didn't. They hit them with a fatal dose of radiation. Pretty much all the C60 rats live, whereas all of the control rats died. So when I learned about that, I got a couple sources of C60, and we were using it during our program, during our research with the fusion reactor, and we're all still around, so that worked out.
Okay, well, I want to take a step back because you're very humble. And a lot of people don't know this. You seem to gloss right over this part. But most people don't wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to work on a MOXIE fusion reactor project. Most people don't wake up in the morning and think I want to prove a more efficient form of nuclear fusion. So can you just help us understand, for those of us who aren't on your level, can you please help us understand what inspired you and what motivated you, and kind of what was the impetus for you to go on this journey to discover this technology and to prove that this would work?
Well, a lot of it was Fukushima. When it melted down, and then finally when the cloud of radioactive came over Colorado, you can actually see gamma radiation.
What does that look like?
It looks like tiny little flashes in your eye, tiny little white or blue flashes in your eye. And so I noticed that I was driving down the road after the cloud got here, I was seeing lots of little flashes in my eyes.
That's not angels.
That's not angels. Those are little gamma angels, gamma ray angels. And so anyway, I decided, I had read about this type of fusion. It's different than regular fusion. Most people take hydrogen isotopes, tritium and deuterium, or deuterium together to make kind of the way the sun does it. But there's a whole other type of fusion. It was discovered by a couple of Japanese guys, Osawa and Kushi, before I was even born, but they got suppressed. And that's what metal oxygen fusion is. And so it's a safe way. Fission, the plants that melted down are fission. They take uranium and they break it down. And that makes a whole bunch of radioactive particle waste, cesium and plutonium and all kinds of other nasty strontium and iodine-131 and various forms of xenon-137 and whatever, lots of the nasty radioactive things, and they last for a long time, and it's really contamination. Whereas with fusion, you're putting things together, and the resulting product isn't radioactive. It's just like putting building blocks together, and so metal oxygen fusion is one of those, and so I got together with a group of people, and we basically reproduced Osawa and Kushi's experiments successfully. And we actually now giving away the only working over unity fusion reactors on planet Earth.
Okay,
so and they don't cost billions of dollars.
To file the patent, and now we've got people around the world basically replicating, proving out that you're.
That's right. It's very replicatable, and they're making their own little fusion reactors and trying to file patents themselves on top of our patent. Okay. But that's what happens with success. So. Yes, fusion is here now. It's metal oxygen fusion, MOXIE.
Okay.
And it's happening. So that was a solution, and we're still all around. So C60 worked. But of course, what we're talking about today is all the craziness. Like in the Ukraine, they have the Ukrainians are threatening to blow up nuclear reactors
in Russia
to spite the Russians because. And which is kind of stupid, but anyway.
Yeah, and if we go back and we think about Chernobyl, we've got these things that have occurred in our lifetime, from Chernobyl to Fukushima, and it's not isolated to that one particular area. It impacts all of us. So these are not good decisions. And you play stupid games, you're going to win stupid prizes.
Oh yeah, and most of the fission reactors, burning the uranium in the United States are actually 20 to 40 years over their license date.
Okay,
So they should have
we
been
have a
shut there.
problem.
So yeah, exactly. And in fact, those big floods we had like 3 years ago, they almost lost.
California?
No, it was in the Midwest.
Okay.
They almost lost a nuclear reactor in, I think, Indiana. It didn't
Yikes.
flood. If it had flooded, we'd have a little mini Chernobyl right here in the United States. So, I mean, this possibility. Of course, the war with the
Israel?
and Iran. Iran has nuclear reactors. Israel has nuclear reactors, and if they start throwing missiles at each other, they're probably going to blow up each other's reactors. And even though it's downwind, it will. It's still going to affect us. I mean, I have a friend, Judd, and he actually doesn't have a thyroid because it was in the 1950s. Remember when they used to blow the nukes up in the
desert here?
in the desert? Well, he was on the East Coast. He lived actually on the East Coast, I think Delaware, and he lived on a dairy farm. And one of those nuclear explosions, the fallout goes up into the air, and most of it falls out for, bigger stuff falls out within 24 hours, but a lot of the stuff just hangs around. And it
stays in the atmosphere.
And then water vapor condenses on it.
Okay.
And so he lived at this dairy farm, and one of those clouds got condensed on and rained on the dairy farm. And they drank milk a lot, obviously living on the dairy farm. Oops. And so his thyroid was destroyed. In fact, my mother's thyroid had problems. Lots of people living on the East Coast and the Midwest had thyroid problems in that age group.
In the 50s and 60s?
Yeah, because of the nuclear weapons they're exploding now. Of course, when they do that, they don't do that anymore, but then they started doing it underground, which is less dangerous. But still, it could happen. We could have a meltdown. They could have a war. They've got 2 wars going with nuclear reactors in the crosshairs. So having some method of protecting you from radiation is important.
Okay.
And one thing I want to tell you, they talk about radiation protectants, right?
Yeah.
That you'll hear things like iodine or this and that. Those actually don't protect you against radiation, the damage of radiation. C60, usually when radiation happens, it produces hydroxyl radicals or ions and superoxide ions. And so those are the most damaging oxidative radicals in the body, and C60 neutralizes them. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it actually, and that's what it was for the rats, because the rats were zapped with the gamma rays. They had lots of hydroxyl ions were produced. C60 neutralized enough of those hydroxyl ions. Usually it's glutathione's job. C60 neutralized enough of those hydroxyl ions that they lived. Whereas the control rats that didn't have C60, they died because those hydroxyl ions just tore them apart cellularly and overwhelmed their glutathione levels, which usually takes care of hydroxyl ions. And the rats died. And so that's why you're probably having a bit of C60. Now, obviously, we're probably not going to get levels that would kill you, but obviously there's, any radiation damage is bad for you.
Right.
And so you could easily have that fallout. Now, I'll just talk about other things that they talk about. Like one of the things they talk about protecting you is taking iodine. Here's propylene iodine. And the reason they do that is because when you have a nuclear explosion or an atomic reactor, one of the side products of the breakdown of uranium is iodine, 131. It's highly radioactive. It has a half-life of 8 days. Mm-hmm. And like if you waited 8 half-lives, and 64 days after that, the iodine 131 would disappear because half-life. Half-life is a time for half. If I had a pound of iodine 131, it would take 8 days for half of that to turn into something else, and then another 8 days to the half of that to turn into something else. And so after 8 days, it's essentially gone.
Okay.
But in the meantime, you got to protect yourself. So if there actually is an incident, that's why they want you to take lots of iodine, because what it is it's not, you just flood your body with iodine. So if you do absorb some of the radioactive iodine, usually in food, then it gets flushed out by the regular iodine. We'll just dilute it, dilution solution. You'll still get a little damage. And that's like, for instance, if that happens, you shouldn't eat any milk or cheese fresh milk or cheese for like 80 days. Because the iodine comes down from the rain, it gets in the grass, the cows eat the grass, it gets in your milk, gets in the cheese, and then it gets into you if you eat it. In the same way with fish or anything else, you basically shouldn't do anything for 80 days on that.
That's going to be hard.
Yes, it is.
It's going to be really hard.
But that's not the only one. Another good thing, this is another chelator. This is chlorella. Chlorella is known to take out heavy metals, which are some of the types of stuff that comes out. Another one of the problems that comes out besides the uranium, besides the iodine 131, is something called cesium 134 and cesium 137. And cesium is in the same atomic family as sodium and potassium.
Okay.
So if you take like potassium chloride, lots of this, you just have so much potassium that if cesium is in the food you eat or something that you drink, it tends to wash it out of your body. So that's like a huge one. And then the last one.
When you say a huge one, just an extra supplement.
An extra supplement. And you're not fixing the radiation damage like
Mm-hmm.
C60 does.
Right.
C60
You're just helping to flush it out of your
you're
system.
flushing out.
That's
Because when you
basically
have a
what it is.
nucleotide, radioactive
Okay.
material inside of your body and it goes off,
Yeah.
that's bad.
Right.
So you don't want that. So basically you want to prevent anything from being resident in your body when that happens. And then the final one that you're going to have to worry about is strontium-90. And strontium-90 is another radioactive thing. It's in the same, strontium is in the same family as calcium. It's an alkali earth metal. So if you take, this is a chelated magnesium, but if you flood your whole body with magnesium or magnesium calcium supplement, then that will flush that out. So it's basically you're taking iodine, taking potassium chloride is usually the best one, and then taking a magnesium calcium supplement, lots of it, way more than you would normally do. That during that time, the first month or so, the first months that will protect you against the radiation. But the only thing
But it's not really protecting you. It's just helping you flush it out.
Yeah, it's flushed out. It prevents it from getting inside your body and decaying inside your body, which is what you don't want.
Okay.
But C60 is the only thing that actually you can commonly get that will protect you against the damaging effects of radiation after it's happened.
From the free radicals.
Yeah, because there was a few other things that are available, but frankly, they aren't physically available to civilians.
Okay.
And then if there was a crisis, you're not going to get them. The government officials will. So if you want to protect yourself and your family against radiation, you really want to get some C60 and have it available in there. And also you can read about these radiation studies in whatisc60.org.